everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to take a deep dive into this book that I found. And
oh, cool.
it really tackles a topic that I know a lot of you guys think about and talk about, especially in the married red pill community. You know,
Right.
a lot of you are really trying to figure out, like, okay, what is going on with relationships today? Why are things so different than they used to be?
Yeah.
And, you know, you guys are in the married red pill subreddit, talk about how to, figure out those covert contracts and
Right.
all that stuff. And like, how do we make things better? So
Yeah.
this book really claims to give us a framework for understanding all of that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's called
Good call.
The Rise of the Anti-Marxist Male.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's a mouthful.
yeah, it's a pretty dense book too, but it's really interesting.
Okay.
So we're going to jump into it and
Right.
try to unpack some of these ideas.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember, this is a complex topic. There are a lot of different perspectives out there.
Definitely.
And, this book is coming from a very particular viewpoint.
Yeah.
So as we go through this, I really encourage you guys to think critically about what you're hearing.
Absolutely.
And, do your own research, form your own opinion.
Yeah, don't just take our word for it or the book's word for it.
Exactly.
So let's start with like the basics.
Okay.
What is this whole cultural Marxism thing that the book is talking about?
Right. Well, the basic idea is that cultural Marxism aims to kind of like analyze and then reshape our culture.
Okay.
And it does that by challenging those like traditional power structures.
Okay.
Especially the ones that are related to, gender, race, and class.
Mm-hmm.
So this book basically takes that concept
Yeah.
and it runs with it,
Okay.
arguing that cultural Marxism is like directly affecting the way that we think about and experience masculinity today.
Gotcha. So it's like, it's not just an academic theory. It's actually like
Right.
impacting our lives.
Yeah, they're saying it's like seeped into everything.
Wow. Okay, so where do they even like start with that? Like, how do they trace this whole thing?
Well, they start with the origins of cultural Marxism itself.
Okay.
They go all the way back to this group called the Frankfurt School.
The Frankfurt School.
Yeah, have you heard of them?
I've heard the name, but I don't really know much about them.
Okay, so these were a group of intellectuals back in the early 1900s.
Okay.
And they were essentially trying to like dismantle traditional Western.
Ooh, wow. Okay, so they were pretty radical.
Yeah, they believed that capitalism and individualism
Okay.
were actually leading to all this oppression and inequality.
Interesting.
So they developed this thing called critical theory
Okay.
as like their main tool to analyze and challenge like all those societal norms that we take for granted.
I see. So it's like they were using critical theory to kind of like deconstruct
Yeah.
Western society.
Yeah.
Okay, so the book argues that these ideas didn't just stay in like, dusty old academic journal.
Right.
They actually like made their way into our institution.
That's their argument. Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Well, they say that cultural Marxism has infiltrated like everything. Education, media, politics, entertainment, you name it.
Wow. So they're saying it's like this widespread phenomenon.
Yeah, it's like they're seeing it everywhere.
Like a virus almost.
Exactly. Like it's subtly shifting the narratives about gender, race, and all those social issues.
Okay, so that's a pretty bold claim. I mean,
It is.
are they providing any evidence for that, or?
They do. They provide a lot of examples
All right.
throughout the book, but we'll get into those as we go deeper.
All right, so let's talk about like the impact then.
Okay.
They're saying cultural Marxism is everywhere. So how is it actually affecting us?
Yeah.
How is it affecting men in particular?
Well, the book paints a picture of a world where men are constantly under attack.
Okay.
Call it the war on
The
masculinity.
war on masculinity.
Yeah, they argue that, like, academia, for example, is pushing this victimhood mentality where everyone's encouraged to focus on their perceived disadvantage.
So it's like men can't even be proud of being men anymore.
Right, they're saying that traditional masculinity is being demonized. And they point to the media, too,
Okay.
saying that men are constantly being portrayed in a negative light.
Like all men are bad or what?
Yeah, it's like they're reinforcing this idea that traditional masculinity is toxic.
Okay, so it's like a two-pronged attack, they're saying.
Right, from the education system and from the media.
Wow. Okay, so, and then they bring up this whole issue of false rape accusations.
Yeah, that's a very controversial part of the book.
Okay.
They claim that false rape accusations are being used as a tool to undermine men.
Like to control them or something.
Yeah.
So it's like they're seeing this as like a deliberate strategy to kind of like emasculate men.
Right, to take away their power.
Okay, so this is getting pretty intense.
It is, and I think it's important to pause here and just like acknowledge the sensitivity of this topic. Like, obviously, sexual assault is a very serious issue.
Absolutely.
And we need to take all accusations seriously.
Right.
but the book is coming at this from a particular angle.
Okay.
They're really focusing on the idea that false accusations are being used as a weapon.
Okay, so they're not denying that sexual assaults happen,
Right.
but they're saying that there's this other side of the coin that's often ignored.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's something to keep in mind as we go through this.
Definitely.
All right, so we talked about like the origins and cultural Marxism and some of the ways that they say it's impacting our society.
Right.
How does this all tie into the manosphere?
Okay, so the book argues that these perceived attacks on masculinity
Okay.
are actually what's fueling the rise of the manosphere.
Makes sense.
You know, these online communities where men are coming together to discuss masculinity and
And
relationships.
to like vent their frustration.
Right, because they're feeling like they're not being heard.
Yeah, like the world is against them in a way. Okay, and the manosphere is a pretty big umbrella term.
It is.
So are they talking about specific groups within the manosphere?
Yeah, they delve into like pickup artists,
Yeah.
you know, those
Yeah.
and involuntary celibates.
The incel?
Yeah.
Those guys.
Okay.
So they're like looking at the whole spectrum.
They're trying to understand the motivations and the perspectives of these different groups.
Okay, so it's like they're trying to connect the dots between cultural Marxism, this war on masculine,
Yeah.
and the rise of these online communities.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a pretty interesting link, I think.
It is.
It makes you think about like, you know, what are the underlying forces that are driving all of this?
Right. What's going on beneath the surface?
Yep. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into some of the specific arguments that they make
Okay.
about how men are being disadvantaged.
Right.
They talk about reverse discrimination. What do they mean by that?
So they're claiming that men are actually experiencing discrimination in workplaces, in education, and even in their relationships.
Really? So it's like they're flipping the script.
Yeah, they're saying that it's not just women who are being discriminated against.
Wow.
They're saying men are facing disadvantages too.
Okay, and they specifically target this concept of male privilege.
Yeah.
They're saying that it's a myth, that men actually don't have it as easy as people think.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do they support that claim?
Well, they provide a lot of examples throughout the book
Okay.
of situations where men are being unfairly treated.
Interesting.
You know, they talk about things like how men are more likely to be injured or killed on the job,
Okay.
or how they're less likely to get custody of their children in divorce cases.
Mm-hmm.
And they argue that these disadvantages are often overlooked in discussions about gender equality.
So it's like they're saying that the conversation is too focused on women's issues
Right.
and that men's issues are being ignored.
Exactly.
Okay, so they're trying to bring some balance to the discussion.
Yeah, they're trying to present a different perspective.
Okay, so they're challenging the traditional narrative about the patriarchy as well.
Right. They're saying that the patriarchy isn't this like monolithic system
Aye.
that's designed solely to oppress women. They're arguing that it can actually victimize men too.
In what ways?
Well, they say that men are often burdened with these expectations
Okay.
to be the providers, the protectors, and that these expectations can be really damaging.
So it's like they're saying that the patriarchy puts pressure on men
Right.
to conform to certain roles,
Exactly.
and that those roles can be limiting and even harmful.
Yeah, they're saying that it's not all sunshine and roses for men.
Okay, so it's a more nuanced view of the patriarchy
Definitely.
than what we usually hear.
Right. They're challenging the simplistic idea that all men benefit from the patriarchy.
Okay, so they're trying to complicate the picture a bit.
Yeah, they're adding more layers to the discussion.
Okay, I like that.
Me too.
So they also talk about social media and how it's affecting relationships.
Yeah, that's a big part of the book.
Okay, so what's their take on that?
Well, they're basically saying that social media has completely transformed the dynamics
Okay,
between men and women.
like in what ways?
Well, they point to things like swiping culture,
Okay.
you know, on dating apps.
Yeah.
And they're saying that it's creating these really superficial connections.
So it's like people are just judging each other based on looks.
Right, and they're not really getting to know each other
Okay.
on a deeper level.
Makes sense.
And they also talk about micro-cheating.
Micro-cheating.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I think so, but remind me.
So it's like those little digital interactions
Okay.
that can blur the lines in a relationship.
Like texting other people or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly. Or
Okay.
like flirting online.
I see. So it's like, it's not necessarily physical cheating.
Right.
But it can still be damaging to a relationship.
Exactly.
Okay, so they're saying that social media is creating a whole new set of challenges for men and women in relationships.
Yeah, it's making it harder to build trust and intimacy.
Wow. So it's like they're painting a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah, it's not all positive.
Okay, but they don't just leave it there.
No.
They talk about the rise of the anti-Marxist male.
Right.
What is that all about?
So this is where they introduce their concept of guided intelligence.
Guided intelligence.
Yeah, it's basically about encouraging men
Okay.
to think critically.
So it's like they're not just saying complain about the state of the world.
Right.
They're saying actually do something about it.
Yeah, they're saying take control of your own life
Okay.
and challenge the mainstream narrative.
So it's like a call to action.
Exactly.
Like wake up and smell the coffee.
Yeah, and they provide examples
Oh, okay.
of individuals and groups who are pushing back
Against what?
against what they call wokeness and political correctness,
Okay.
which they see as manifestations of cultural Marxism.
So it's like they're saying don't just blindly accept what you're being told.
Yeah.
Question everything.
Yeah, do your own research.
Form your own opinion.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's about being more assertive and reclaiming your power.
Yeah, and taking responsibility for your own life.
Okay, so this is getting pretty deep.
It is.
I mean, we've gone from the origins of cultural Marxism to
Yeah.
the rise of the anti-Marxist male.
Yeah,
That's a lot to unpack.
it is.
And I'm sure there's even more to come.
Oh, yeah, we've only just scratched the surface.
Okay, so stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. So last time, we were talking about the basics of cultural Marxism.
Right.
And
For Frankfurt School and all that.
yeah, and all these kind of wild claims that the book is making.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's...
Like the war on masculinity.
Yeah, the war on masculinity.
All that stuff.
So let's dive into like one of the central themes
Yeah.
that the book keeps coming back to,
Right.
which is this idea of a covert contract.
Yeah, I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
Like from the red pill community.
Right.
It's this idea that there's this unspoken agreement in relationships between men and women.
Right.
Like men are supposed to provide and protect.
Provide and protect.
And women offer companionship,
Yeah.
take care of the home and all that.
Manage the domestic sphere.
Yeah. But the book is saying that this contract has become kind of lopsided.
Right.
Like it's not really fair to men anymore.
Yeah, they're arguing that like the rise of feminism
Okay.
and the sexual revolution,
Right.
while they were advocating for equality,
Mhm.
they unintentionally kind of shifted the balance of power
Okay.
in
Yeah.
relationships.
Interesting.
And so it's like men are still operating
Yeah.
on this old playbook,
Right.
but the rules of the game have changed.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And the book argues that this is like creating a lot of confusion and frustration for men.
Yeah, definitely. Like I see that a lot in the Married Red Pill subreddit. Like guys are feeling like they're still expected to be the breadwinner
Yeah.
and take the lead in the relationship.
Even-
But then they're also criticized for not being like
Yeah.
emotionally expressive enough or sensitive enough.
Right. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, it's like a no-win situation almost.
And the book really emphasizes that.
Oh.
Like they're saying that this shift is
Got it.
leading to a decline in men's confidence.
Okay.
And this fear of being labeled as toxic or creepy.
Yeah, that fear of being labeled is huge.
Oh, it is.
Like I see that all the time online.
Yeah.
Guys are constantly worried about saying or doing the wrong thing.
And the book ties this directly back
Right.
to cultural Marxist ideology.
So they're saying that this fear is like
Yeah.
a result of cultural Marxism.
They're saying that it's a deliberate attempt to demonize traditional masculinity.
Wow.
And to promote like a more feminized ideal.
So it's like they're trying to make men more like women.
Well, they're saying that there's this push to kind of erode those traditional masculine traits.
Okay.
And to replace them with more feminine ones.
And they connect this to the false rape accusation thing too.
Yeah, that's where it gets really controversial.
Right.
They're arguing that this fear of being falsely accused
Yeah.
is part of this larger strategy to
Right.
control men.
So it's like they're seeing it as a form of power
Yeah.
that women have over men.
And again, I think it's really important to approach this topic with caution.
Yeah, definitely.
Like we said before, sexual assault is a serious issue.
Absolutely.
And we should never downplay that.
Right.
But the book is coming at this from a particular angle.
Okay.
They're really focusing on this idea
Yeah.
that false accusations are being used as a weapon.
Okay.
And they're not necessarily denying that sexual assault happens.
Right.
But they're saying that there's this other side of the coin that's often ignored.
Okay. So it's a complex issue for sure.
Definitely.
And it's something that we need to be very careful about when we're discussing it.
But I do think it's something that a lot of men are concerned about.
Yeah.
And the book definitely taps into that sentiment.
Yeah.
You know, this feeling of being under attack, of
yeah.
constantly having to defend yourself.
Right.
And they're arguing that this perceived threat
Yeah.
is a deliberate strategy
Okay.
by cultural Marxists.
So they're seeing it as like a conspiracy almost.
Well, they're definitely saying that there's an agenda at play.
Okay.
And that this agenda is to dismantle traditional power structures and to elevate women at the expense of men.
Okay. So it's like a zero-sum game in their view.
Yeah, they're saying that one gender has to win
Okay.
and the other one has to lose.
Yeah, and they're obviously on the side of men.
Well, they're definitely advocating for men's rights.
Okay.
And they're saying that men are the ones who are losing out.
In this current cultural climate.
Right.
Okay, so it's a pretty bleak picture that they're painting.
It is in some ways.
But they also offer some solutions.
They do.
Right? Like, they don't just leave men feeling helpless.
No, they definitely provide some guidance.
Okay, so what do they suggest men do?
Well, one of the things they talk about is understanding hypergamy.
Hypergamy.
Yeah. Have you heard of that term?
I think so, but remind me.
So it's basically the idea that women are naturally attracted to men who are higher up on the social and economic ladder.
Okay, so it's like women are looking for providers.
Yeah, they're looking for partners who can offer them security and stability.
And the book is saying that this is like a biological thing.
Yeah, they're arguing that it's rooted in evolution. Like, women are instinctively drawn to men who can protect and provide for them.
Okay, so how do they suggest men navigate this?
Well, they encourage men to focus on self-improvement,
Okay.
like building their careers, increasing their financial stability, and developing their confidence and their social skills.
So it's like become the best version of yourself.
Exactly.
And then women will be attracted to you.
Well, they're saying that it's not just about attracting women. It's about thriving in a world that's constantly evolving.
So it's like a more holistic approach.
Yeah, it's about becoming a well-rounded individual.
Okay, I like that.
Me too.
It's not just about like tricks and techniques to
Right.
get women.
It's about genuine self-improvement.
Yeah.
And they also emphasize that this is not about blaming women or feeling victimized.
Right.
It's about taking responsibility for your own life and making positive changes.
So it's like a proactive approach
Exactly.
rather than a reactive one.
Yeah. And they encourage men to embrace their masculinity, but not in a way that's aggressive or domineering.
Right.
It's about finding that balance
Okay.
between assertiveness and respect.
So it's like a more nuanced view of masculinity.
Yeah, they're saying that it's not just about being tough and strong.
Okay.
It's also about being sensitive and compassionate.
So it's like a more well-rounded view of what it means to be a man.
And this ties into the whole red pill philosophy.
Okay.
You know, this idea of waking up to the realities of modern relationships and developing strategies to navigate this new landscape.
And a lot of guys in the married red pill community are really struggling with this.
They are.
Like they're trying to figure out how to make their relationships work in this new world.
And the book offers some insights into that.
Okay.
Like, it provides a framework for understanding these changes that are happening.
And it gives guys some tools that they can use
to improve their relationship.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable.
True.
Especially for guys who are feeling lost and confused.
Right.
And like they don't know what to do.
The book can definitely provide some...
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the negative aspect of cultural Marxism. But the book also highlights what they see as the emergence of a counter movement.
Yeah, they call it the rise of the anti-Marxist male.
The anti-Marxist male.
And they tie this directly to their concept of guided intelligence.
Right. So it's like men are waking up
Yeah.
and they're starting to fight back.
And they're using critical thinking to
Yeah.
challenge those mainstream narratives.
To develop their own understanding of the world.
Exactly.
So it's like a call to action.
It is.
Like they're saying, don't just sit there and take it.
Right.
Stand up for yourself.
Yeah, and they provide examples
Okay.
of individuals and groups who are doing just that.
So it's like a movement that's gaining momentum.
They're saying that it is.
Okay, so this is getting pretty exciting.
It is.
Like it's not all doom and gloom.
No, there's definitely a sense of hope in this book.
Like men are starting to realize
Yeah.
that they have the power to change things.
Exactly.
It's kind of interesting how they connect this whole guided intelligence thing
Yeah.
to the decline of like traditional masculine virtue.
Right, like they're saying that
Yeah.
those traits that we used to value.
Yeah, like courage and stoicism and self-reliance, they're saying that those are being eroded
Yeah.
by this culture that celebrates victimhood.
Yeah, like everyone's supposed to be sensitive now.
Right. And it's like,
Just fine to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But they're saying that it's gone too far.
yeah, like we've swung too far in the other direction.
Exactly.
And it's actually harming men.
Yeah, and society as a whole.
Right, because men are,
Like they're losing their sense of purpose.
yeah, and they're not sure how to be men anymore.
Right. Like, what does it even mean to be a man in today's world?
Yeah, that's a question I see a lot in the married red pill subreddit.
Yeah.
Like guys are struggling with that.
Yeah.
They're feeling like they're
Yeah.
being told to suppress their natural masculinity.
Right. And it's creating a lot of inner turmoil.
Yeah, for sure.
And the book argues that this is like going against men's natural instincts. Like, men are wired to be protectors and providers and leaders.
Yeah.
And when those instincts are suppressed,
Okay.
it creates this void.
A void.
Yeah, like a sense of emptying.
Okay.
And that can lead to all sorts of problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, they talk about things like difficulty navigating relationships, feeling purposeless, even depression and anxiety.
Wow. So it's like they're saying that this suppression of masculinity is actually making men mentally ill.
Well, they're saying that it's a contributing factor to
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of men's mental health issues.
That's pretty heavy.
It is.
But what's the solution?
Well, the book offers some hope.
Okay, good.
They're not just leaving men feeling like they're fighting a losing battle. They actually provide a path forward.
Okay, so what is it?
Well, they say that it's not about
Mm-hmm.
lamenting the past
Okay.
or blaming women for the changes.
Right.
It's about taking ownership of your own life
Mhm.
and making positive changes.
So it's like a self-help book in a way.
Yeah, in a sense.
Okay.
But it's also a cultural critique.
Right, it's both.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of positive changes are they suggesting?
Well, they talk about cultivating those inner strength
Okay.
and virtue.
The ones we talked about before?
Yeah, like courage and stoicism and self-reliance.
Okay.
They're saying that those are the qualities
Yeah.
that will allow men to thrive.
Regardless of what's happening in the culture.
Exactly.
So it's like an internal solution.
Yeah, it's about building yourself up from the inside out.
I like that.
Me too.
It's empowering.
It is.
And they also talk about the importance of male friendship.
Yeah, strong male bonds are essential.
Okay.
Especially in a world where men
Yeah.
often feel isolated.
Yeah, like they can't talk to anyone.
Right, like they're not allowed to express their feeling
Yeah.
or they're afraid of being judged.
Right.
So having those strong male friendships
Mhm.
provides a space for men
Yeah.
to share their experience,
Mhm.
to offer advice,
Yeah.
to support each other.
Yeah, like a brotherhood.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like they're saying that
Yeah.
men need to stick together.
Yeah, they need to support each other.
And they need to create their own community.
Exactly.
Where they
yeah.
can be themselves.
Yeah, without fear of judgment.
I think that's really important.
Me too.
Especially in today's world.
Yeah, where it feels like men are constantly under attack.
Right.
So this book is like a call to arms in a way.
Okay.
It's saying wake up, take responsibility for your life,
Yeah.
and fight back
Okay.
against these forces that are trying to undermine you.
So it's a pretty powerful message.
It is.
And I think it's one that a lot of men need to hear.
I agree.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
I mean, we've gone from
Mhm.
the origins of cultural Marxism
Mhm.
to its impact on relationships to the rise of the anti-Marxist male.
It's been a wild ride,
It has.
but I think it's been an important one.
Yeah.
Like, it's important to have these conversations, even if they're uncomfortable.
Right, because we need to understand
Yeah.
what's happening in our culture.
And how it's affecting us.
Yeah, and we need to find ways to navigate these challenges.
Create a better future.
Exactly.
Self-
And for our children.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in learning more about this, you can check out the book.
Yeah, The Rise of the Anti-Marxist Male.
It's available on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
So go check it out.
Yeah, and let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
All right, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks everyone.